Welcome to Hill TV's live coverage of the 6th Democratic presidential debate. We are going to be live throughout the night with an amazing group of guests to give their insight and their analysis, especially with the smaller debate right around the corner this time. KB, who is going to be joining us?
Well, in just a few minutes, friend of the show and D.C. Bureau Chief of The Intercept, Ryan Grimm, the one and only, is going to offer his predictions for the night. And after the debate, representatives from the Sanders, Warren, and Buttigieg camps are going to share their insights into the candidates' policy versus their performances. Of course, we're also going to have a stellar team to talk about everything that happens tonight during Night 6. You know you don't want to miss it.
First up, though, Crystal and I are going to go into what we are thinking about tonight's debate. So we have a good little lineup here of all the candidates. I mean, I guess we have to start with former Vice President.
Got to start with the front runner.
He is the front runner. Real Clear Politics average has him at 27.8%. And one of the things we've been hammering home this week is over and over again is that from that Nate Silver analysis that he was really bounced between 26 points and 24 points in their overall 538 tracker. In other words, the guy seems to be Teflon. And Crystal, I know you have a lot of thoughts about how to actually take this guy down.
I do. Yeah. He does seem to be Teflon, and he is challenging to take on because, look, he's got a 70% favorability rating within the Democratic Party, second only to Bernie Sanders in terms of favorability. People like him. They've got a kind of warm fuzzy about him. So they're not going to go, look, you and I have some pretty sharp critiques about Joe Biden. They're not going to go from where they are to where we are overnight. So I think you have to take more of a sort of like bless his heart approach. The fact of the matter is he has blundered his way through decades of public service. And I think that a lot of people would find it credible to question his judgment. He's repeatedly had bad judgment, whether it's going for austerity during the Reagan administration, whether it's busing, whether it's criminal justice, whether it's NAFTA, banking deregulation, bankruptcy. And this is kind of an amazing thing. You know, Kamala Harris in that first debate, she did actually strike a blow against him. It actually landed and he dropped in the polls and she popped up. But she didn't follow through. It ended up looking too cute, too premeditated. She wavered on the underlying busing policy, so things reverted back to the mean. But to me, that shows there is a vulnerability there. People have to be willing to go after him, though, and that's the thing that we just haven't seen the willingness of anyone capable of landing a punch here.
The biggest problem we have these candidates who don't understand how this works. Here, listen, like I've said over and over again, the center of gravity of Biden's campaign, what is it? Electability. And what goes to the electability? Judgment. How are you going to be able to run the country? Now, what goes to the center of that? 40 years of terrible decision-making. NAFTA, PNTR with China. I mean, Bernie has done this before. There was one moment he had a spontaneous thing where he said, look, Joe, let's talk about your record. Biden was reduced to this. He literally went like this, and the moderators just moved on. I was like, what is going on here? But if you're Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, you got to twist the knife. Right before this, Crystal, you and I were taking a look at that Elizabeth Warren interview with Rolling Stone. They tee it up for her. They're like, well, do you still disagree with Joe Biden on banking deregulation? And she's like, yes, I have the same position I had then. And then she goes, I don't want to litigate what happened 15 years ago. No. You need to litigate what happened 15 years ago because you're dropping like a rock in the polls.
Right. Well, and especially, look, first of all, bankruptcy, which is the issue that she had a famous fight. I mean, we've all watched the clips of her fighting with Joe Biden on this issue of bankruptcy, where he basically sold out consumers to the credit card companies who are based in his home state, right? So that interaction is all there for her. That is her life's work. And so for a candidate whose tagline is dream big and fight hard, to be offered a chance to go after him on his signature issue and just completely decline. I mean, it seems to me, even though she previewed in a big speech running up to this debate, she previewed attacks on Biden and she previewed attacks on Buttigieg. She's followed through more with her fight with Buttigieg, but I don't see, based on that Rolling Stone interview, I don't see any willingness to take on Biden on the stage
hours before this debate stage, and she can't do it. I mean, what did she do whenever Joe Biden falsely, literally told a lie that he took credit for the CFPB? She stood there and took it.
Crowning achievement of her career.
She should have absolutely just been like, that absolutely did not happen. I give credit to Barack Obama. You were nowhere to be seen. And by the way, I had to fight with Barack Obama too. That is something that actually really would have resonated with people.
And it speaks to electability because you've got to be able to imagine these candidates going toe-to-toe with Donald Trump, who frankly, look, he doesn't have a lot of substantive policy depth, but in terms of the stagecraft of debate, he's head and shoulders above really anyone else on that stage right now. So she needs to show she can get in the ring, that she can go toe-to-toe, and that she can throw a punch. That, I think, is really important for her tonight. I don't have a lot of confidence that she'll be actually willing to do it.
No, she hasn't.
But we also shouldn't let Bernie Sanders off the hook here, who, again, look, he's been strong in the polls. He's been surging. He's in really good position, especially in the early states. He's right there, right below Joe at 19.3% in the Real Clear Politics average. He is the most liked candidate in the field. His favorability is somewhere around 75%.
Right.
So there's a lot of room for him to grow in spite of the conventional narrative that there's a hard ceiling on his support. I don't see any sign or evidence that that is the case. But as things stand today, the race has to shake up a bit. Biden has to come down a few points. And at some point, Bernie has to get over the fact that Biden is his friend and really go after him on his judgment, right? Not in a super, it doesn't have to be ugly, doesn't have to be aggressive, but you do have to make the case. It's important.
And what he needs to say is, look, Joe and I, we served in the United States Senate for however many years. On that time, he was on this side and I was on this side. He was on this side and I was on this side. And look, I think he's a nice man. The grief that he's gone through as a family man, I mean, I sympathize with that so deeply, especially as a personal friend. But he has driven this country down the wrong path. And you need to ask yourself whether you can afford to return to the Obama years. I mean, again, I laid this out earlier this week on Joe Biden. If the entire candidacy is, let's go back to 2013, and Barack Obama put his entire legacy on the line with Hillary Clinton, how can that possibly be the winning and inspiring message that you need? It's just not going to work. And nobody understands this more than Bernie Sanders. Throughout the Obama administration, he was talking about the working poor in this country, the explosion of poverty, bank deregulation, consolidation of healthcare companies. I mean, the man is most trusted on all of these issues by Democratic voters. And he needs to act like it. He needs to actually cash the checks that he has been hoarding for so many years. He's a 78-year-old man. It's never going to happen again. It's now or never. There are 7 weeks left in his political career, right? Or maybe 8 weeks. For these next two primaries, he's got to step up.
Yeah, I think that's right. And your point about he's most trusted on the issues is well taken. Next, let's talk about Mayor Pete. We are going to bring Ryan on here in a minute. I want to get his take because he's done some of the greatest reporting on Mayor Pete and in particular his disastrous faked black endorsements of his Douglas Plan for America. Now, we thought for sure last debate after Ryan released that piece, and he was rising in the polls. He's the new quote-unquote frontrunner in Iowa. We thought for sure he would take a hard question. Of course he didn't. So I think, though, the tide has turned a little bit for him at this point. There was another New York Times op-ed today saying Pete ain't it. Editorial board came after him. He's actually had to field some challenging questions about his time at McKinsey, about his whole tenure as mayor, et cetera. So I think he may actually face a more hostile group of moderators and more hostile group of candidates.
Hostile group of moderators, hostile group of candidates. You know what else is hilarious? On this signature issue card, what's listed? Generational identity is people. That is what we had to list. Or that's what we had to list for Pete Buttigieg's signature issues. That tells you everything you need to know about the man, right? I mean, think about it. Why is Pete Buttigieg running for president? Because he thinks he's a really smart guy. And he got, 11,000 votes as the mayor of South Bend. That's it. Ryan has laid out, this explosive reporting, which for some reason the moderators in last time's debate just decided to let fall to the wayside. That's not going to happen again this time. And again, what it was is the media created Pete, and then they decided to take him seriously. And he was not ready to rise to that occasion. 0 to 2% amongst black voters in South Carolina. No support amongst the black community in these Super Tuesday states. In Nevada, Latino community, same thing. The man is not a serious candidate. We've said that before. You cannot win the Democratic nomination with numbers like this. The only ones even poised to possibly get that are Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And I think he's really going to be exposed tonight. Yeah,
I think the establishment is starting to get serious. Pete was a nice flirtation. But now it's time to get on board for the establishment with Joe Biden. Next up, let's talk about Andrew Yang. So, last debate, he got 6 and some change speaking minutes, didn't get called on until after the 30-minute mark, and yet here he is, outlasting Cory Booker, outlasting Julian Castro, all these other people who didn't make the debate stage, outlasting Kamala Harris, who dropped out of the race entirely. With only 7 candidates on the stage, you have to think he's actually going to get to speak tonight.
And yet, I'm not so sure he's going to. I got to say it. I think the institutional bias against Andrew Yang
too strong.
is just so strong. That being
He will
said,
get like 7 minutes tonight.
Yeah, maybe. But this is what I've been saying ever since the last debate. Andrew Yang owes it to the Yang gang, to his supporters, to show up and fight for speaking time, to force debates, to take the opportunities when he gives an answer, not just to answer the question, but to invoke another person's name. Let's remember what the debate rules say, that when you invoke a person's name, they get to respond. He needs to get into these back and forths.
Yeah.
He needs to go after Elizabeth Warren. If he believes in automation, right, he needs to go after her on that. If he believes that UBI is better than a federal jobs guarantee, he's got to force that conversation with Bernie. This is his job as an actual debater. He needs to understand the rules. He needs to show up for his people, because right now, he's very much at a risk of not making the next debate.
He has shown his humor, and he has shown his humanity. Tonight, he needs to show his spunk and his strength. It's time for us to see that side of Andrew Yang. Amy Klobuchar, the candidate the media most relentlessly wants to make happen, and so far hasn't. Look, she checks a lot of boxes for the establishment, coming from this Midwestern state, having the unabashed neoliberal centrist policies that they love, all of that. She always comes with these like prepackaged one-liners that they respond to. She's not afraid to tell the progressives that their ideas are wild-eyed and crazy. She speaks the unity, civility language, all of that. All of that, in their mind. All of those boxes are checked for the establishment. I've read so many hot takes about how Amy's surging at the right time. So for her, it's less of how she actually fares and more of how the pundits interpret how she fared after the fact.
Exactly right, which is that Amy Klobuchar, who is full of nervous energy and terrible jokes, all really has to do is continue that spiel, keep getting way more speaking time than she actually deserves in order to convince the CNN panels of the world that she did a really good job. And we can just relive this hellish news cycle all over again about amazing Amy's great debut.
And last but not least, there will be one billionaire on the stage tonight, not to disappoint any of you all. Tom Steyer will be there. Look, we shouldn't sleep on him, though, because, look, he made it on the stage when a lot of people didn't. He's got a whole lot of money to spend. And in some of these early state polls, we marvel at this. He's getting 5 to 10% in some of these early states. So he talks a lot about climate change. It doesn't make sense to me because here's a guy who made some of his money off of investing in coal, who still owns energy industry stocks. His plan is not as good as Sanders and Warren, et cetera. But there he is. I don't know, Sagar.
He's
what
up
do you
there.
Say? He's there.
He's got a lot of money. It's funny. I put out a call. I said, if you're a legit Tom Steyer supporter, let me know.
We want to know.
I got like 3 actual responses. Most of you trolled me and sent me some really hilarious ones, talking about how you just needed a big rich man in order to come and save you, and then just be like, nah, JK, I actually just wanted to get on Rising.
Well, he's not even the biggest billionaire in the field.
Right. That's the other thing. The novelty of it is so much gone. It's so gone. Ultimately, I wonder
how he's going to talk about.
I don't know.
I wonder how he's going to talk about impeachment, given that was how he initially. That was his thing. That's how he built his list, et cetera. So maybe he'll go in hard on that. I don't know. All right. Joining us now, who do we have, Sagar?
Oh, it's a friend of the show, Ryan Grimm. He's the Washington Bureau Chief of The Intercept. Ryan, it's great to see you, one of our favorite
analysts here. And what you all don't know is Ryan has been awkwardly standing here and judging us
the whole time.
For all of our commentary.
Shaking my head.
Ryan, which part of that did you enjoy the most?
Always Buttigieg.
Yeah, always the Buttigieg. Well, lay out that reporting actually for the audience.
That's a good place to start.
Ryan, in your mind, how did they not set that up in the question last time?
Actually, it was easy to miss, but they tried.
With Kamala Harris, that's right. But she didn't take it, and they didn't press it.
I think that Kamala Harris had already by that moment decided that she was going to drop out. And so in her mind,
she
she's
did have a sort of defeated quality.
It's valuedictory, this is my final moment up here on the stage.
Yeah.
And that was actually when I thought, actually, she might be out of this race.
Yeah.
It was such, they teed it up for her. And then she pivoted to. She still tried to, and I talked to some of her staff afterwards. She was trying to make the point that he doesn't have the support from the black community, so he's not electable. without coming right after him and without going right at the Douglas plan, whatever you want to call it.
Well, it's weird. It was funny too because the part of that the media actually seized on was the stock photo from Kenya, which is like not good, but it was kind of the least significant part of the reporting.
Right. And it's not even close to, 200 fake black endorsements. I mean, that's crazy.
And one of the reasons, I think the reason they seized on it is because, like you said, it's much easier to confront that.
Right.
And to say, you know what, the guy screwed up in this funny, and he can apologize for it, and you can move on. But when you look at the extent of the kind of racism embedded in what was done, then that's like staring right in Medusa's face.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to do that. Because what happened to the people who were put on as signatories of a plan that they specifically told the campaign they did not support would not be done to leading officials of any other race.
No,
you wouldn't go to an Iowa state senator who's white.
No.
And they tell you, I don't support your plan, and then you see a press release out with your name on it. That just wouldn't be done.
That's a great
And
point.
Lord knows if Bernie Sanders had done that, he'd he'd be out of the race. Like literally, it would have been massive catastrophe, crisis, etc. I want to ask you about what we were saying about Joe Biden. And first of all, do you agree with the essential idea that if things don't shake up in the race, he will probably be the nominee? And then do you think that the right tactic for these candidates is to critique him more directly than they have so far?
Yeah, but for a different reason than you guys were saying. I think people are fine with him having bad judgment if they think he can win.
Interesting.
Because they think Trump is leading us to some apocalypse and is destroying the country. So there's almost no amount of negative things that you could convince people of that would sway them away from Biden if they still think that Biden is the person that's most likely to beat Trump, because polls already show that people don't agree with where he stands on the issues.
Right.
There's the biggest,
especially in the Democratic Party. I mean, there could not be a bigger gap.
Yeah.
The biggest gap out there is Joe Biden supporter, but do you agree with Joe Biden? And it's a massive gap. So that work has already been done. But people are like, you know what? He's better than Trump, and he will win.
So how do you ding that?
So I think the reason that the Harris hit worked is not because people had strongly held opinions on busing, but they saw him as weak.
Right.
And they saw him as someone who could get knocked on his heels, and they thought, Harris is someone who can knock somebody on their heels, so I'm with her.
I think you're right.
And Biden is somebody who's
that is
got
why
a glass jaw.
Because
not just his judgment.
He couldn't respond.
Right, and that's the thing is you got to force this guy to answer for Iraq. Right? And that's the thing. He doesn't have a good response. We already know that. We saw Bernie do it. There's no defending what he did on China trade, right? There's no defending Hunter Biden. There's no in fact, his defenses of Hunter is when he gets the most emotionally charged and all of that. I mean, do you think there'll be a moderator question on that tonight? We know that Tim Alberta of Michigan is going to be there. He's a very fair journalist. It's possible he could bring that up.
No, I think so. And every time he gets rattled, it affects people's ideas of his electability.
Exactly.
And the only way you beat Joe Biden is to get in Democratic primary voters' heads that he's actually not the electable. And the reason that Warren was climbing throughout the summer is that she was climbing. Momentum begets momentum, and it gives you an aura of a winner. They're like, oh, well, maybe she can win because I see her winning. As she's fading, the reverse happens. Now that Sanders is kind of moving up,
same thing.
People start to reevaluate. Because if you look at the reverse, he's like a reverse Biden. Like everybody agrees with him where he stands on the issues. They trust him on health care. They trust him to be for working people, et cetera. But they don't necessarily think that he can beat Trump.
What do you think he needs to do to change that impression? In some ways, he has the least to lose at these debates because his people are the most solidly behind him. But he still needs to come up in the polls a bit. He needs to improve his positioning if he's going to win. He needs to eat into some of that Joe Biden support. What do you think would be the best tactic for him?
I mean, the one thing he has going for him is that in these debates, he's been the same guy at every single debate, 2015, 16, and
same
this time.
thing,
And it can be frustrating. He'll capture the attention of the audience. He'll take a breath. You're like, oh,
it's coming.
Here it comes. And then it'll be a stump speech.
Right.
And everybody starts looking around and waiting for the stump speech to end. And I get it. He's got to keep saying it because it's all still true. But what it does is it gives him an opportunity. If he does something different this time, that's what the media loves.
Yes.
They crave something new. They're news media. So because he's always done the same thing, he's got a huge opportunity to just mix it up and be like, wow, there's a new Bernie. He's up in the polls. He did X in the debate.
Right, came out fighting. But that's the real question, Ryan. I mean, you've known his team for a while. Does he have that in him? Does he actually have that in him to go after Joe Biden? Does he understand what I was talking about? Like I said, I mean, 78-year-old man, this is it, last 2 months. That's it.
That's the real question, and he's the only one that can answer that. I think he's, in some ways, he's a different person after his heart attack. He's got more energy.
He does.
And I think he's kind of feeling his oats. Coming
Seems
into
a little feistier.
Coming into Iowa here, so I think he gets what he has to do. Will he go through with it? I don't know.
Yeah.
How about Warren? She's been sliding in the polls. I think, she's very damaged by her equivocation on health care, and then the answers she put out sort of satisfied no one because they were obviously designed to satisfy everyone. What could she do tonight to try to turn things around? Do you think she should continue her spat with Pete? Is that the direction to go? What do you think?
I mean, it's kind of make or break for her, right? Like, so it feels like she has plateaued, like she's kind of stopped the slide. Like she's not crashing anymore, but she's not
15%.
She's not really rising anymore. And so she needs to get back to that place where people can see her beating Trump, because like Bernie, I mean, people trust Bernie more on a lot of these issues now than the equivocating. It contributes to that, but people agree with her, more than they agree with anybody else other than Bernie in the primary. They just want to know, can you beat Trump? So she has to get out there and show that she can. And show that she can throw a punch, and show that she doesn't have a glass jaw. Like in the debate, or previously where she started her slide, she seemed to be getting knocked back on her heels here and there, and wasn't hitting back.
Yeah.
All of this comes down, I mean, I think to the central question of you have to hit back. You have to be able to show people. It's like, remember, Ryan, you were standing right here after that CFPB event. You were one of the original reporters on that beat, and you were like, that didn't happen.
Right.
That didn't happen at all.
And
I mean, why did you have to say that? And why didn't she say that? She did it.
Yeah.
And she thought, I think, that she was being clever in the way that she paused and said, I thank President Obama. But I think you might have to get a little bit
more
understated,
more direct at this point.
That seems to be a problem for her.
I thought at the beginning, after we got past the DNA thing, which was a disaster, which still damages her, I think, because it calls into question her judgment. But after we get past that, I actually thought her strategy was really smart. To hug Bernie, to say, I'm just like him, just as progressive as him, Medicare for all, I'm with Bernie, et cetera, and whisper quietly, but I'm safer, more electable. I'm a team player. That was the message she was sending quietly to the Democratic Party. Now, I think that was actually a smart strategy, because all things being equal, a lot of progressives would look and say, okay, older white guy, slightly younger woman, let's go for the woman. Why not? If they're the same, let's go for the woman.
The one who doesn't call herself a socialist.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
Calls herself a capitalist.
Exactly. So I actually thought that was a smart strategy, but she's essentially blown that up at this point. Like, there's no going back to that after the way that she messed around on Medicare for all and some of her other blunders.
Well, with the portion of people that I think she calculated were not coming over from Bernie.
Yes.
And so it's like, well, if I'm losing over here because I'm trying to pull these people over, why not just give up on these people? So I think she gave up on some of those folks. But there's also a world where they continue to help each other. And Larry Cohen, Bernie supporter, made this point recently, that if Warren dropped out, half of her support or more goes to Buttigieg, Biden.
Right.
And so then they climb. And yes, the other half then goes to Bernie. Same with Bernie. If he dropped out, half of his support goes to Biden.
Yeah.
So if they can lock down this 40 to 50% and keep that lockdown, through January and February, and then whichever one is on top and kind of climbing coming into the convention, the other gets behind. That could be ironically the best way.
I hear that, but I don't really buy it.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, just because the way that these things work, and they're so dynamic, especially in a year where Democrats are so determined to beat Donald Trump, like that is the animating force. I think once someone gets momentum, I don't see it going the brokered convention route. I think somebody will get momentum and you'll get a clear front runner. I can't see it going all the way where then you have a deal between Sanders and Warren.
Well, it's like a hybrid of those two things. It's not quite a brokered convention,
right?
But it's but it's blocking Buttigieg and Biden from them becoming the front runners in too early of a fashion.
Well, because Buttigieg, look, I don't take him seriously as a candidate given his lack of African-American support and Latino support for that matter. But he has a lot of money. Yeah. So he's not going anywhere. There's no reason for him to go anywhere.
He's spending a lot on TV
a ton
in
of
Iowa,
money.
right?
And the Steyer point that you made earlier is interesting, I think, for people, particularly online audiences, to understand the lasting importance of television. It's easy for people to say, you know what, I don't watch TV. Nobody cares about TV ads. I fast forward everything. Wrong. If that were true, then how did Tom Steyer buy 10% of the polls? His campaign is a walking experiment of what is the value of television ads.
So true.
Right.
And
Bloomberg
now we know it's about 10%.
Yeah.
7 to 10%.
Yeah, I mean, it cannot buy you the nomination, but it can get you in the hunt. Can get
And
you,
that matters.
And it matters, and it affects the whole, especially with a divided field like this. It could literally throw the race in one direction or another. Bloomberg, meanwhile, continues to come up in the polls and has
7%.
Limitless money. He spent $100 million in the first 20 days of his race. And look, he's not my cup of tea, right? But he does have this image as a competent executive mayor of a big city, right, where you really have to do, a real city. Nothing against South Bend, but he got a few more than 11,000 votes or whatever Pete did. And so, yeah, he's coming up in the polls. Right now it's coming right at Pete's expense, but I would not be surprised to see Bloomberg get up as high as 15% of the vote, something like that.
Right, yeah, because he has actual name recognition, and if people start to see him as a potential winner, then that could gravitate
and he's a fighter.
towards him.
Yeah, and
he's feisty. He
goes to the problem that Crystal has identified, which is he's not up on that debate stage because he doesn't care. He's just like, no, I'm not going to do any donations. So now he won't even face the scrutiny. I mean, I think the one person the whole stage could unite in hatred on is Bloomberg. It actually would make it more interesting. And now he's not even there. So in a way, he's even coasting through that.
It's so true. Interestingly enough, he put out his health care plan, and he's embraced a public option. It's very much like the Biden or the Pete model. And just for me, it was a stark reminder of how far the Democratic Party has come on healthcare. And you really do have to give Bernie Sanders credit for that. I mean, back when we were, talking about the ACA, the public option was like the outer fringe of what you were allowed to be for. And now even Michael Bloomberg supports a public option. It's an amazing turnaround.
Yeah. It really is. It makes you wonder how much they actually support it, but the fact
they have to at least pay lip service.
Yeah.
The fact that you've forced people like Michael Bloomberg into that, I mean, look, it's still, in my view, a corporate compromise centrist position and always should have been viewed as such, but that you've forced them into what used to be the most progressive position of the Warrens of the world is a pretty remarkable thing.
Yeah, it really is.
For sure.
All right, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan. We'll have Ryan back after the debate as well for more stunning, brilliant analysis. We're, of course, all excited to see where this goes tonight.
So we're going to be back right after the debate for a full hour of analysis. Our star-studded panel is going to be here. You do not want to miss it. Representatives from different campaigns and our star analysts, many of the ones that you might recognize from our panels. We will see you guys very soon.
Enjoy the debate, guys.